اللهم ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا ايها الذين امنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا اله الا الله والله اكبر ولله الحمد. الله اكبر الله اكبر الله اكبر الله اكبر. اشهد ان لا اله الا الله اشهد ان لا اله الا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. سلام شكرا ورزقنا واستغفر المقام برحمتك يا أرحم. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. صلاة العشاء. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رب ادخلني مدخل الصدق وأخرجني مخرج الصدق واجعلني من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحمد الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي والذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد اللهم صل على محمد تسبيح جناب فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليه اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم انه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي وانما اطلبه بقطرات تخطر ولا قلبي فاجر في طلب البلدان فانا فيما نطال المختار من كالحيوان لا ادري في سهل او في جبل ام في ارض ام في سماء ام في بر ام في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت ان علمه عندك واستاقه بيدك وانت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسبحه برحمتك اللهم صل على محمد وآله واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا وما فقدهم قريبا ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني لا بما لا فقير إلى رحمتك صل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم.
عليكم السلام. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله. يا ابن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباكر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها القادم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الحاد النكي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله حاجات. يا ساداتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
سورة الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما قضينا عليه الموت ما دلهم على موته إلا دابة الأرض تأكل من سأته فلما خر تبينت الجن أن لو كانوا يعلمون الغيب ما لبثوا في العذاب المهين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. On this Tuesday night in which we do tawassul to Masumeen alayhim wa salatu wa salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your tawassul tonight. All of those who are here and all of those who are participating online, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this tawassul give us the benefit of the shafaat of Masumeen. Of course, more in the hereafter than in this life. We are benefiting from their shafaat here, and inshallah we will continue to benefit from it in the hereafter. I recited in this short time that I have, maybe 6-7 minutes, this ayat from Surah Salah, ayat number 14. The story of Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, which is a fascinating story. Of course, where he requests Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him a palace, a government, a kingdom, which no one ever had before. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfilled his need in a sense, fulfilled his hajat or his desire or his will or his wish. Now, the purpose behind it, that's alone, but this is what he asked for. And that's the difference between Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and other prophets. That Prophet Muhammad is given without questioning or asking. That's the special status he enjoys from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran, وَلَا سَوْفَ يُؤْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. The Prophet will give you something soon which will satisfy you. But when it comes to other prophets, they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they request. Similarly, you and I are ordered to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Udu'uni astajib lakum. Ask me and I will reply and respond to your hajat. So the story of Hazrat Sulaiman, inshallah, another day I will discuss fascinating aspects of the story. But in this chapter, Surah Sabah, where the majority of that story is discussed, this ayat is there regarding the death and the wafat of Hazrat Sulaiman. Even with the greatest kingdom that he had, even with all the possessions that he had and control he had over humans, jinns, and animals, it slowly came to an end. So the ayat says, when we decreed that Sulaiman should die, so his wafat is mentioned here. No one knew of his death except for a creeping creature of the earth who ate up his staff. So the death of Hazrat Sulaiman is how? That he's standing on, imagine, king's palace, and he's standing on the terrace of the palace where he would address and had the assembly. And so he's on top and he's looking down and he's standing there with his asa, with his staff, and he just died standing. And he stayed in that position because the asa continued to protect him from falling. And people here thinking, and now of course no comparison, I just want to draw so that our children here understand. Imagine, where am I? Asa over there. And the asa that I hold, I'm standing holding on to that. I'm not leaning on that asa, that staff, that cane. I'm just using it because it's recommended. But he was leaning onto it and he died while standing. And now if I stop speaking for 5 minutes and I was just standing over here, you'll start getting worried. You'll send salawat a few times. Maybe Maulana needs to catch a breath. And then even then, if I don't respond, you'll come and try and see if I have fallen asleep. It's normal for people to fall asleep in the crowds, right? Sitting down or whatever. But it's sometimes, you never really see anyone standing over here fall asleep. So you'll get worried. You'll come up and you're like, Maulana, are you awake? What's going on? And then if I don't respond, you get worried. Maybe something, more serious have happened. So that was the story. So he's standing there and he's dead. And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took his life. Nobody knew except this creeping insect or creature, you want to call it, that wood-eating creature, maybe a termite or something that eats up the wood. Now, whatever that creature is, we don't know. It started eating up the asa of Hazrat Sulaiman, and as soon as it ate up, of course, it takes time for this creature to eat the wood, and it started eating, then the wood, started shaking, and then he fell, and that's when people realized that he had, for example, he was unconscious all this time, and he had passed away. So the ayat says, when we decreed Sulaiman should die, no one knew his death except for a creeping creature of the earth who ate up his staff. When he fell, the jinn realized that if they had known about the unseen, they would not have remained in such humiliating torment for so long. I mean, if they had known with their ilm that they possessed, and they thought that they possessed a great ilm and the knowledge of the unseen and some of the things that they were able to perform. For example, when the story of Hazrat Sulaiman begins, he asks to bring me the throne of Bilqis, queen of Shiva, queen of Saba, Ifrit, Kana min al-Jinn. He said, what? I'll bring it before you stand up from your place. So these are some extraordinary things that they're able to perform. Now, that's not the story that I wanted to get into, but because the background was there, so I mentioned it. Allah sent 124,000 messengers for the purpose of the guidance of mankind, all of whom came with one purpose, and that was to bring people out of darkness and show them the light. Every prophet preached two main things which were common amongst them: belief in one God, and that they were the emissaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These were the two common things that you find from Adam alayhi salatu wasalam up until our prophet. Everyone, now they, of course, along with it, they taught other things, but the two most common things that they repeatedly mentioned were believe in one God and believe me as the messenger of God. Aside from these messengers, which we have the number, and we know this number, 124,000, we've always heard this number. There are other emissaries of Allah who carried out specific messages and the guidance for mankind in the form of animals. So aside from human messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent messengers in the form of animals as well, used them to convey specific meanings and messages otherwise which he did not want or could not have been delivered by any other human. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used these animals. Inshallah, in the next 3-4 minutes, I'll go over who are these. Quran points out the role and their mission. Now, of course, if I go in the role of all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 animals, it'll take a while for me to go through. So I'll just list these 12 emissaries and the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala other than the human prophets. Number 1, a spider is sent to protect the prophet in the cave. That history of prophet when he's migrating, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the spider, which was not there at that time, but it was sent to go ahead and do a specific purpose to serve. It says, إِلَّا تَنْصُرُوهُ فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. If you do not help him, then Allah certainly helped him with the faithless, when the faithless had expelled them. So chapter 9, verse number 40, Mufassirin mentioned that this help refers to the spider which went ahead and built a web, and through which people thought there's a web outside the cave. There's no way someone might have entered in it recently, otherwise it would have broken. Inna awhan al-buyut labaytu ankabut, as the ayat says, the most fragile of the houses are the houses of Ankabut. There's no way that anyone can enter and the house of Ankabut still remains. Even the wind can blow it away, let alone insan, humans. That gave the people indication, these polytheists who were running after Rasulullah, who had expelled Prophet from Makkah, that nobody's here, and then they went away. So this was a specific purpose that spider was sent to go ahead and perform this. Now, no other human could have been able to do this. An animal had to perform this task. A crow is sent to teach a man what to do in the case someone dies. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ غُرَابًا يَبْحَثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ لِيُرِيَهُ كَيْفَ يُوَارِي سَوْءَةَ أَخِيهِ. So then Allah sent a crow exploring in the ground to show him how to bury the corpse of his brother. This is in chapter 5, ayat number 31. Discussion is of Habil and Qabil. Qabil killed his brother Habil, did not know what to do with the body. He felt regret. I killed my brother, what to do? I have no idea. No one had died before in the history of mankind. So he did not know what to do with it. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a crow to show him what to do. This was a special messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 3, that hudhud or the hoopoe, that bird in the story of Hazrat Sulaiman is responsible for delivering a letter from Prophet Sulaiman to the Queen of Sheba. It says, idhab bi kitabi hadha, that after he saw what is happening, Hazrat Sulaiman sends him as his messenger, as his deputy. Idhab bi kitabi hadha fa'alqihi ilayhim thumma tawalla anhum fandur madha yarji'un. Take this letter of mine and deliver it to them, then draw away from them and observe what response they return. There's a bird which has the ability not only to be able to deliver a special message, but then on top of that, to be able to observe what do they make of this message. When the message is delivered and they read through the message, which is commanding them to come in submission, he's observing what are they planning on doing. What did he observe? Of course, he observed that they neglected the message. They said, we'll go ahead and bribe Sulaiman. So they sent for him what? These gifts of gold and silver. So this hudhud comes back. He informs Hazrat Sulaiman that your message was delivered. Instead of obliging, now they're going to go ahead and send gifts, thinking like any other great king, you will also take this as a token of their appreciation and let them be and not do anything. Their initial problem was that they were worshiping someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kingdom of Prophet Sulaiman cannot allow that to happen. So he told them to be submissive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and come in submission to me. They refused. They sent these gifts. Hazrat Sulaiman now is aware of what they are planning on doing. So they're sending these gifts of gold and silver. Prophet Sulaiman, before they arrive, makes his workers build the roads of gold. The entire roads were made of gold. even the stables of the horses, where they would have these gutters, the waste of the animals would go through, those gutters were made of gold. That's what Hazrat Sulaiman ordered. He said, go ahead and make them all of gold. So when these people laden with all the gold and silver gifts on top of these animals, thinking in their mind that we're bringing a great gift to Sulaiman, and he'll easily accept all of these gifts and he will let us. They walk in and they see that the roads are made of gold. The gutters are made of gold. The animals are living in, like, what is our gift worth in front of all the gold that this great man possesses? So, when you want to give someone a gift and you see that they have something much, much bigger, you go ahead and hide your gift away, or maybe some other time. That's what happened. Now that, again, I'll go into the story of Prophet Sulaiman. Number 4 is the flock of birds, Ababil, were sent as the messenger to do that specific duty, to go ahead and crush the army of Abraha. Serpent is responsible to prove the authenticity of Hazrat Musa. فَأَلْقَى أَصَاهُ فَهِيَ ثَوْبَانٌ مُبِينٌ. So Hazrat Musa had the staff, he struck it on the ground, it became that snake which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent with his might, with his power. Thereat, he threw his staff, and behold, it became a manifest python, which was able to, of course, devour all these other snakes type things that existed. And all of these magicians fell into sajda, saying, we believe in the Rabb of Musa and Harun. A fish is responsible to warn Prophet Yunus. فَالْتَقَمَهُ الْحُوتُ وَهُوَ مُلِيمٌ. Then the fish swallowed him while he was blameworthy. Hazrat Yunus' story, he left Ghazban on his own people, not listening to him. And he ended up being in the belly of this giant fish, which was, of course, sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that specific purpose, to go ahead and carry him safely and sound. A creeping creature, which we talked about, Dabbatul Ard, which ate up the staff of Hazrat Sulaiman. A dog is appointed to guard the people of the cave, Ashab al-Kahf. وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ. This is how Quran explains it. وَكَلْبُهُمْ بَاسِطٌ ذِرَاعَيْهِ بِالْوَصِيدِ. While their dog lay outstretching its paws at the entrance, they slept for 309 years, only to wake up, realize that the world has not changed much. Of course, it changed over time, but the greed and the jealousy and the envy and those things still exist. This world is not worthy of living. They ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want to go back to sleep that we were in. 4 birds are means of certainty, itminan, for Hazrat Ibrahim when he questions, oh Allah, how do you create? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do you not believe? He said, no, I do believe. لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي, so that I may have itminane qalb. He said, فَخُذْ أَرْبَعَةٌ مِنَ الطَّيْرِ فَصُرْهُنَّ إِلَيْهِ. Catch 4 birds. What do you do? Cut them into pieces and place them on different mountains and call them. So he took 4 birds, he cut them in pieces. What will happen to a bird if you cut them in pieces? Dead, ready to be cooked and eaten, right? If it's halal bird, for that matter. He placed them on 4 different mountains. Then he called them. The pieces came together. Of course, the same bird, or the new Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent as the messenger to go ahead and prove to Hazrat Ibrahim how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates. Camel, cow, and sheep are considered to be the sacraments of God, the sha'air. That she-camel of Hazrat Saleh, Naqat Saleh, was sent when the people of Hazrat Saleh asked to produce a miracle, and even that specific miracle, that it should be a camel, a female camel, pregnant, and all these attributes to make things hard, right? You want to prove that you're the Prophet of Allah? All right, let's see what you can do. We want you to bring forth out of that mountain a camel who's pregnant and who's all these attributes that are associated with it. Allah knew that these people were not going to believe still, but maybe some might have effect of it. Allah fulfilled the command of Hazrat Saleh's demands and produced this she-camel, which we always mention and discuss in Surah Wash-Shamsi wa-Duha. All of these are God's emissaries other than the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent in order to go ahead and perform different tasks and duties in some ways help out the prophets of the time. Hopefully it gives us an insight, inciting definition to look into the ayat of Quran, to look from the aspect of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has addressed these things. Wa akhiru da'wana, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to ponder in the ayat, in the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and implement them in our lives. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Habib Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Khairat Allah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alaikum ya Abdullah, assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa ala jaddika wa abika wa ala ummika wa akhika wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum ya Gharib al-Ghuraba, assalamu alaikum ya Mu'in ad-Du'afa wal-Fuqara, assalamu alaikum ya Shams al-Shumus wa anis al-Nufus, ayyul madfun daratu Salim ibn Musa wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum sahib al-asr wa zaman, assalamu alaikum ya Amal insi wal jan, assalamu alaikum ya Sharik al-Quran. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أهوال الأنصار ورحمة الله وبركاته.